Top story, the NDA government has made its first major U-turn after coming to power. It is announced that the report into India's failings in the 1962 war with China will remain a secret. Well, this is in complete odds with the position of the BJP and in particular the Defence Minister Arun Jaitley, who took on the issue in March this year. That is when part of the report was leaked by the historian and author Neville Maxwell. Arun Jaitley, who was then the leader of the opposition in the Rajya Sabha, called for declassification of the full Henderson-Brooks-Bhagat report. Now, writing on his blog, he said, and I quote, "With the wisdom of hindsight, I am of the opinion that the report's contents could have been made public some decades ago. Now, however, he seems to have had a change of heart." In a written reply to a question in Parliament, Mr. Jaitley, as Defence Minister, has said, and I quote, "Release of this report fully or partially or disclosure of any information related to this report would not be in national interest." Now, what about this sudden U-turn, this change of heart? Nobody quite knows, but only in March this year, Arun Jaitley on his own personal blog had stated that this report should be made public. Moreover, he had gone a step further and said that there should be declassification of reports such as this. But now, a complete change of heart being shown by the Defence Minister. And breaking this news and headlines today is my colleague Jugal Purohit, our defence correspondent, getting us up to speed with the latest. Jugal, what seems to have brought about this change of heart for the Defence Minister?
Well, Preeti, it's a little difficult to say right now because this piece of news that we're now breaking for our viewers has emanated out of Rajya Sabha at a time when the rail budget was on, and obviously the spotlight was on that rail budget. But what we do understand from our sources in the Defence Ministry is that there are multiple reasons that they've given to us. Among them are the fact that the Indo-China border or the line of actual control, as we now speak, is still not fully defined. Especially the Chinese have refrained from handing over what they believe or their perception of where this line should run. So there are several historical consequences which may be shaped by making this report public. That is one of the explanations. The second explanation that we are getting from our sources is that while this entire issue was being debated and discussed, it does seem that the Defence Minister, who 4 months back was the leader of opposition, seems to have wisened up to a lot of new facts which the Defence Ministry has spoken about. And it does seem that in the Defence Ministry, it's primarily the Indian Army which is concerning this report. And Preeti, I just want to show to you, this is essentially the release which we've got from the Defence Ministry. And here it says that this is a top secret document, has not been declassified so far. Further release of this report fully, partially or any information related to this report would not be in national interest. So it does seem that for the BJP and particularly for Mr. Jaitley, who on his blog in March spoke about making this report public, it seems to be that there is a change of stand.
What's the sudden change of heart? Jugal, do stay on with us. We're getting reactions thick and fast. Veteran journalist Mr. Kuldeep Nair is on the phone line with us. Mr. Nair, what do you make of the Defence Minister? Only in March this year, he had stated that reports such as this should be declassified, especially quoting this particular report, and now suddenly a change of heart, sir.
See, I don't agree with him. This report should be published very quickly. In fact, earlier also. And at the moment, I have gone to the High Court and the appeal is pending. I went through this right to information, but there I lost the case and now I'm waiting on the High Court.
Go ahead, sir. Yes, we can hear you.
Gee, what? Hello?
Yes, Mr. Nair, why do you think that there has been a change of heart? Because the Defence Minister in March earlier this year in his blog had stated, because the parts of this report have been leaked, it's extremely important. He had stated, quoting this report, that reports such as this should be declassified and made public. Why do you think there has been a change of heart, Mr. Nair?
I think it's a public opinion pressure. There's nothing else. But, because after all, there's nothing that report now. See, this happened in 1962.
Right.
And since then, weaponry has changed, tactics has changed.
If this report is published, Mr. Nair, do you reckon that this will be in public interest?
Yes, I think so. My feeling is because the rulers, political rulers are blamed in that, and that is the reason the government is not publishing it.
All right, do stay on with us. We also have Gaurav Sawant, our strategic affairs editor, who's in the studio with us at this point of time. Gaurav, why this change of heart by the defence minister? It was only in March where Mr. Jaitley had taken on the government, said when parts of these reports were leaked, stating very clearly that reports such as this should be declassified.
Well, there are two aspects to this story. The 1962 Henderson Brooks report, it's very important for the army to read this report, for future generation of commanders to read this report so that they don't make the mistake. It's very important for our political masters to read this book so that they don't make the mistake that was made in 1962. There are portions of this report that my sources who have accessed this report say cannot be made public even today because it would be detrimental to India's stand when it comes to India-China boundary issue. India-China boundary issue is still a hot topic. It's still a contested topic. Now, this was not the mandate of either Henderson or Brooks, but they did go into the aspect of what the actual line was, what India's claim line was, what China's claim line was, and where the Indian army actually went, where the Chinese army came. And in all of that, if all of this is made public, it could well benefit China and not India.
You know, Gaurav, stay on with us. Reactions coming in thick and fast at this point of time. Retired Lieutenant General D. Shikhattar is on the phone line with us. Sir, the question I'd like to ask you is, as even Gaurav was stating, that it is not in national interest if this report gets published. What do you make of it, sir?
I entirely agree. To publicize this report at this point of time is not in the national interest. I stand by my statement. I can tell you one thing, that 90% of the people who are demanding the release of this book, the release of the report to the public information, have not seen this report. You see, when you demand something when you're outside the government is totally one thing, because you are not accountable. Once you are part of the government, and when you see the effects, when you see the everything, then your stance is bound to be changing. After all, successive governments of this nation have decided not to disclose. I refuse to believe that none of them thought it correct to...
General Shikhetkar, you've been actively involved. General, you've been actively involved in negotiations with China when it comes to the boundary issue. Now, there may be portions of the Henderson Brooks report that should not be declassified, but there are portions of this report that the entire country must see. Where did the military commanders fail? Where were problems, whether it's with logistics or operations? Where did the political leadership fail in terms of interfering in military promotions, postings, decisions? All of this should be made public, sir.
Yes, sir, I agree with you. I entirely agree with you. But where the military commanders have failed, what the political situation is there, what everything is there, I think 90% is already in public domain. There is no more secret. The part which is concerning us, and I stand by what has been stated today, I have not heard but in Parliament, because today now you read, you come to know what the ground reality is. And let me tell you one thing. In case if it gets declassified now, it is bound to have an impact on our negotiations. I'm sure it is bound to have impact because there are certain things which are stated in the report are not to be disclosed at this time. Yes, once we resolve the issue, once we come to a conclusion, maybe 10, 15 years thereafter, you can decide to review. But as of now, till the boundary dispute is not resolved, I don't think, I repeat the word, I don't think it is correct to declassify this report. And when you say declassification, it cannot be in bits and pieces. Either you declassify the whole report or you keep the whole report as a secret. So I think there is a wisdom. There is a wisdom in the previous government and the present government not to declassify it. You see, when you speak without seeing the report, you say, yeah, it should be declassified. Everybody should know. Yes, everybody should know. Why not? But the fact is, if everybody comes to know today, how will your opponent, how will your adversary use this report and the information contained in this report may not be correct. It may not be in the interest of India at the moment. Let me assure you one thing.
Yes.
I'm telling you with all this responsibility at my command, it is not in the interest of the government of India or the nation to declassify the report.
General, appreciate you joining us at this point of time, giving us your perspective. Gaurav, it's not so much as the defence minister who's had a change of heart from March to now. It's more about national interest, whether or not declassification of this report would actually serve the country in any form way. We also are joined at this point of time by Mr. Claude RP. He's a defence writer. What do you make of this current change of heart by the Defence Minister? Claude, you've been writing on the subject. Do you reckon that it would be in the national interest of India not to declassify this report?
And I think the matter is very simple. If some para or some pages need to be still classified, they should be classified. If you look at the American, the way they declassify the CIA papers, they just sometimes blacken one name out or one para out of the document, and that's it, and they declassify the rest of the documents. So it should be done the same way, in a very professional manner. The people who have been involved in this issue should look into it. And if there is one or two words or one or two para or one or two places, because it seems it's going around a few places which are disputed by China and by India. So this can be still remain classified, but the rest of the report should be declassified. And I can tell you one thing, when Neville Maxwell put it on his website, it also came in some Indian websites, and I was told that 10,000 army officers have read it in 1 week. So the point is now, most of the people who are interested have read it, or the most important part of it.
Appreciate you joining us, defence writer Claude Arpi there, giving us his perspective. Now, what are the reasons that this report, that most opinion that we're getting in at this point of time confirms should not be declassified? I'd like to bring in our Strategic Affairs Editor, Gaurav Sawant, who's with us at this juncture. Gaurav, what is it so sensitive about this particular report, about the 62 war, that it should not be out in public domain? And even if we have to sift through it, what should be made public and what should not be made public?
You know, in the past, the army moved an official request with the Ministry of Defence saying that portions of the Henderson Brooks report should be taught at military academies, whether it's the Indian Military Academy or the Officers Training Academy, so that young officers know what were the mistakes that were made in the 1962 war. That was the biggest debacle that the Indian Army faced. It was a complete rout. The Indian Army wasn't prepared. The Chinese did extremely well in the northeast. But there's also another aspect. In Ladakh, the Indian Army did extremely well. In fact, the Battle of Rizangla is something that India talks about so extensively, where Major Shaitan Singh and his Charlie company of the Kumaon regiment, they practically, it's a legend in the army that they defeated an entire brigade of the Chinese army. So while this part of it is taught, there are issues with logistics. Why was the Indian Army's logistics so poor? There are portions of the report which are online. We don't know whether it's the official report or parts of it that leaked, that talk about how instead of ammunition, commodes were being taken up to the front for military commanders. How there was political interference in the appointment of top commanders in the northeast, including General Cole. So there are a lot of aspects that the government did not want it to become public. But there's another very important aspect of this report, and that is India's claim line. What is India's claim line? What is China's claim line?
Which could impact future diplomatic negotiations.
There have been 17 rounds of boundary talks between India and China, and then China could show that report to us and say, it's your own report that says this. That is why government doesn't want at least that portion to be made public.
And what's the reason that the Defence Ministry is quoted right now? I'd like to bring in Jugal Purohit, who's broken this news right here on Headlines today. Jugal, you've been in touch with the MOD. Any official reaction coming in from there?
Well, Preeti, there's no official reaction as such which will come from the MOD, because it's a stand that the MOD has been consistently taking, and there's no need that it feels to explain itself. But now that we are on the issue, let me just tell you essentially what is the Henderson Brooks report. There is a lot of misconception about it being politically involved, perhaps having damaging consequences for a certain political party. The fact is that the Henderson Brooks report was only mandated to analyze the military failure which took place in that war. It did not get access to the political domain. It did not even get access to the army headquarters own superior letters and exchanges which took place. So there needs to be a lot of understanding about just what this report is all about. It talks about essentially the military aspect of the operation involved in that area. It names units, it names officers, it names men. It perhaps also recalls a lot of incidents which the army should not have had at all. It perhaps also goes into taking into account the behavior of certain units. One doesn't know essentially what is in it, but one must understand that it only talks about the conduct of the army, the conduct of the operations which took place. And here is where I want to bring in this contrast, Preeti, that we are bringing out for our viewers. Behind me is the Bharatiya Janata Party website. If my camera could just pan on and show you further. This is the Bharatiya Janata Party website. 19th of March is the date. Arun Jaitley writes on the Henderson Brooks report, and he there ends with this, with saying that with the wisdom of hindsight, I am of the opinion that the report's contents could have been made public some decades ago. This, and within 4 months coming back to power and saying that there is obvious national security repercussion, which is why we cannot make this report public. It's quite a U-turn. It's something that a lot of people who were expecting from the BJP seem to have been disappointed. They say that the government has not, satisfied them with the kind of conduct that it expected, because not just Jaitley, but even Prakash Javadekar, Ravi Shankar Prasad, all of them had at that time in March 2014, when a certain blogger had put this report out on the internet, said that this report needs to be made public. So just what happened now?
Well, maybe prudence demands that it be revisited, and maybe parts of it are released and parts which will impact India's future national interests be protected. For now, gentlemen, Gaurav Sawant and Jugal Purohit, appreciate both of you joining us on this special news break right here on Headlines.